When I think back to the first time I laid eyes on Halo Combat Evolved, I recall it was at my uncle's house. My dad and him were playing LAN multiplayer together on the original Gearbox Software PC port. I didn't pay much attention at the time, but years later, when my older brother and dad got a copy of the game, I spent hours watching them play through the campaign over and over again. My brother's favorite level was the library, which he played over and over on Legendary. Nowadays, I play Halo CE on the infamous Master Chief Collection, a program that was controversial at launch, but works quite well now. But what is it that makes a game released for a fledgling next-generation console all the way back in 2001, when I was 1 year old, by the way, so well-known and well-respected to this day, 24 years later? Greetings all. Today, I present to you a video which will be somewhat of a departure from the norm on this channel. Whereas I usually share with you my comics and stories, today we're talking about a special game, Halo Combat Evolved. But why are we talking about it? What possible relevance can it have? Well, as you may know, 343 that is Halo Studios, is now working on a full campaign remake for Halo Combat Evolved, with various intended graphical and gameplay updates. But I'm going to pose to you a question. Are more realistic graphics actually an improvement to this game? Are we missing something in the full-on chase to achieve the prettiest lighting, best shadows, and most reflective surfaces? The company behind the Halo Combat Evolved remake appears to be operating on the assumption that more technically realistic graphics makes an objectively better gameplay experience. But is this always the case? Is this even ever the case? In exploring these questions, I would like to introduce you to a concept I like to call artistic intent. Simply put, this is the intent of the individual behind creating a piece of art, be it a video game, comic book, novel, or what have you. A good artist will produce their work of art with a consistent style throughout, ensuring that the entire piece is uniform once complete. The style that they choose is important, as often it can complement the artistic piece, or, if not picked out carefully, could harm the piece overall. Let's take, as an example, a subject I am well versed in, comics. Marvel and DC superhero comics are well known for having more realistic art, which is congruous with and complementary to the more serious nature of the stories told and characters portrayed. On the other side of the coin, comedic cartoons generally have funnier art. I love Calvin and Hobbes. The art style is very well thought out, and the illustrations help to sell the jokes. Is Calvin and Hobbes a lesser form of art, though, because it has less technically realistic drawings? What of other great comics over the years? Peanuts, Garfield, Popeye, and the list goes on. It's my contention in this video that the level of technical realism has no bearing on the enjoyment the consumer can gain from a piece of art. And I would apply this to any art form, including video games like Halo CE. Now, I've laid out a groundwork to analyze what I consider to be the artistic brilliance of Halo CE. Let's dive into the artistic elements of Combat Evolved and see if we can find them complementing the form and function of a science fiction first-person action-adventure shooter game. Let's start our analysis with Halo CE's vibrant roster of enemy characters. And what better way to begin this section than at the very bottom, with the Grunts. This species, known in Halo lore as the Ungoi, was introduced into the Covenant as no more than untrained cannon fodder, sent into battle without so much as the courtesy of a weapon to wield. Until, that is, they rebelled, fighting back against their Covenant overlords and gaining the respect necessary to become true foot soldiers. In spite of this respect, they're still treated mostly like garbage by their elite and brute commanders. In Halo Combat Evolved, the Grunts wear a face respirator, an armored combat harness, and sport a large triangular backpack full of methane that they breathe. And there we begin to see some useful art design by Bungie. The low-ranking grunts, known as grunt miners, have an orange combat harness, but the high-ranking grunts, the grunt majors, have a red harness. And at first glance, this may seem a trivial distinction. However, in practice, a player can easily make a positive identification of a grunt enemy on the battlefield, even from a distance, knowing which rank they are and thus what threat they will pose. For a first-person shooter, this quick IDing of enemies is essential to forming your combat strategies before those enemies turn you into a pile of mush with their energy weapons. Later in the game, we also face off against Spec Ops grunts, who often wield a needler or a fuel rod cannon. They also have jet black armor that honestly looks really good, but also is an easy distinction against standard grunts, again giving the player the information needed to make decisions. Now, in a lot of FPS games from the time, and even today, the player has a hard time telling when he lands a hit on an enemy. Most games solve this problem by having bright blood splatters come out each time an enemy is hit, so that at a distance you can clearly see that your shot landed. However, Halo CE, while still having the blood effects, solved the problem in another way that benefits the entire game as a whole. The game contains many animations for the enemies where they enter a stun state upon being hit, recoiling back wildly. This serves as a visual tell that you landed a shot, but also makes your weapons feel extra powerful. Let's look at another popular game released at a similar time to Halo Combat Evolved, Half-Life 2. In this game, the weapons feel more like squirt guns. See how the enemies don't recoil even a little bit when hit? Well, you'd think bullets would hurt, but it sure doesn't look like they do. But in Halo, the AR wreaks havoc upon the grunts, stunning them into oblivion. And now is a good time to talk about our next enemy unit, the Elite. The Elite species is known as the Sangheili, and they were one of the original founding members of the Covenant, a proud warrior race, like Klingons in Star Trek.
It's an earth drink. Prune juice.
Warrior's drink.
The Elites stand 8.5 feet tall and are equal to the player in health, shielding, and speed. Unlike the Grunts, the lower elite rank, the Miner, wears a sleek blue armored combat harness, while the higher common rank, the Majors, wear similarly colored reds as the Grunt Majors. The Elites have a unique factor in their favor, the energy shielding which protects them from incoming damage. This is where another great art design choice was made by Bungie. They had a problem to solve. How do you make it clear to the player that they've hit the Elite's shields with their weapon? How do you communicate to the player how much shielding is left? Rather than using lazy health and shield bars floating over the characters' heads, Halo Infinite, they chose a far more interesting and interactive method. The shields flare up when hit by incoming damage, and as they take more damage, they become brighter, being brightest just before the shield breaks and is disabled. And after the shields break, the Elites will either go berserk and try to beat up the player, or, perhaps more intelligently, run for cover to allow their shields to regenerate. Sometimes they'll even take cover behind their allies who still have shields, displaying a sort of battlefield brotherhood between the Elites, as they gladly use their own shielding to protect their comrades. Upon taking damage after their shields are down, the Elites have an energetic stun animation just like the Grunts, continuing to keep the player's arsenal feeling effective and powerful. There are, of course, other elite ranks as well. Invisible elites, who are nearly impossible to see, except a slight shimmer where they walk, but have no shielding to balance out their sneakiness. Elite zealots, with striking gold armor, often seen wielding the iconic Covenant energy sword. And, of course, the Spec Ops elites, with similar jet black armor to that of the Spec Ops grunts, who toss grenades at the player like it was going out of style. But now let's move on to the next enemy unit the player meets on the battlefield, the Jackal. This alien species is known as the Kig-Yar, angry chicken lizards who are physically weak, but make up for it with their handheld energy shield, known in lore as the Point Defense Gauntlet. As with the Elites and Grunts, the Jackals have great stun animations for taking damage, continuing the trend of making the player feel powerful by showing the enemy units reacting heavily to his actions. The easiest way to identify Jackal ranks on the battlefield is the color of their energy shielding, with Jackal miners carrying a blue shield and majors carrying a gold one. To make it clear when the shield is hit, it will turn red, and it can be quickly and easily drained by plasma weapons. However, human-made weapons that fire physical projectiles do not break these shields, rather ricocheting off with a sharp, satisfying sound effect. Again, here we see an artistic design serving a gameplay purpose of telling the player what he needs to know. Is the body hit? The character is stunned. Is the shield hit? It changes color and/or plays a notable sound effect. The shield itself also helps the player identify Jackals at a distance, easily making a gameplay decision based upon how many bright shields he can see in the next group of enemy units. But there's still more enemies to discuss. Next, we meet the Hunter. The Hunter is actually a colony of worm-like creatures known as the Letgolo, held together inside their armor like a network of powerful muscle tissue. This foe wields the devastating fuel rod cannon, as well as a massive arm shield used to protect themselves and, of course, as a melee weapon. While this opponent is incredibly deadly, Bungie didn't leave the player without any hints as to how to defeat them. Hunters will jerk in pain and drop some worm goo upon impact from plasma weapons, indicating that plasma can melt right through their armor and do damage, regardless of where it hits. Although, if it collides with their special arm shield, it will ricochet away. Speaking of ricocheting, human weapons will ricochet off of any part of their armor, but it will do larger amounts of damage than plasma when hitting the unshielded portions of the creature. As to the Hunter attacks, the player can learn to fight them fairly, because the fuel rod cannon has a brief charge period between each shot. And during this charge-up time, it will glow green, making it quite eye-catching from a distance, which alerts the player to incoming danger. Before trying to melee the player, the Hunter rears back and charges. At this point, the player can sidestep the incoming hit and come around behind the Hunter to fire back at their relatively unprotected backside. Now, we could also analyze the Flood, but there are similar tells and gameplay mechanics to make fighting them fair and balanced as well, although of course part of the Flood combat is focused upon the unpredictable nature and brutal attacks. However, I may want to cover that topic in a future video anyway, so let's move on to the artistic design of the maps. The maps in Halo CE probably look quite desolate and empty by today's standards, especially when compared to the Combat Evolved remaster from 2011, and what we've seen so far from the Halo Campaign Evolved remake that's slated to release in 2026. But is this a technological limitation of the time? Or was there more artistic intent hidden behind the seemingly simple level designs? Given what we already know about Bungie's artistic care, we should definitely take a closer look. What we know from the story is that the Covenant ships chased the UNSC Pillar of Autumn from Reach. The Pillar of Autumn did a wild, random slipspace jump to escape, and ended up at the gas giant known as Threshold. And orbiting this planet was a strange ringworld designated by the Covenant as Halo. The Covenant ships followed the Pillar of Autumn and attacked. The crew of the ship evacuated down to the surface of the ring, totally unsure of what they might find. Emerging from the escape pod, we find a brightly lit canyon full of grass, streams, trees, and cliffs. A natural biome built into an artificial construct. A galactic contradiction that defies human expectations. As the player progresses, he finds ancient abandoned facilities with alien computer consoles of unknown mechanical function. These facilities look abandoned, possibly for a lifetime or more. Though not necessarily dirty or run down, they seem dusty, forgotten, left behind. Clearly built to fulfill a purpose, but that purpose seems long forgotten, while the machinery still whirs on, functioning the way its designers intended, but to no end. Even the outdoor environments look oddly empty, as though there should be someone, or something, here. But for some unknown and unexplainable reason, it is simply gone. Let's contrast this with the Halo CE remaster and the remake alike. Right off the bat, we see environments oversaturated with lighting and color. Small details like bushes, rocks, vines placed everywhere in a way that overwhelms the eyes. It's clear to see that these details do not help the story. Rather than reinforcing the concept that you and your Marines are alone on an ancient abandoned Forerunner construct, it feels like you're in a populated, modern science fiction environment, civilized and filled out, And what of the combat? Is it assisted by this artistic re-rendition? You can see from the footage on screen that both the remake and the remaster suffer from the problem of muddy visuals. The over-detailed and over-colored environments blending into the enemy models, making it far harder to read enemy type and rank at any distance. I could discuss this further at length, but this video is pretty long already, and I think you're starting to get the point. The artistic design of Halo Combat Evolved is far more intentional than 343 and Halo Studios gives it credit for, with decisions made to enhance the experience of combat, environment, and story. I sincerely hope these issues will be remedied to some degree before the CE remake is released, but we will have to wait and see. Thanks for listening to what I have to say on this subject. I appreciate your watching to the end. Let me know what you think in the comments, if I'm right, wrong, or, anywhere in between. I hope you'll consider leaving a like and subscribing as well. I look forward to seeing you next time. If you want me to cover more of the Halo Original Trilogy content, let me know. It's a lot of fun to talk about.